All right. All right. James, I appreciate you being here early as always, my man, but give us some credit. He says over under 6 p.m. Thursday. It's 5:06 on Monday, so we got the day right. And we were before your 6 p.m., so give us credit where credit's due. Ladies and gentlemen, back with another Monday evening live stream, and we have got a full house. We've got PG, we've got Jake Merrill, we've got Jay, we have got Jason, we've got Coach Sean, and we've got Coach Smook. Let's just go right down the line. Right, for all topics this evening, unless we're just doing an open round table, let's just go straight down the line. That way it's nice and easy. How y'all doing? PG, we'll start with you.
Doing good. I'm glad Mondays are back.
Mondays are back. Jake?
Man, I'm doing awesome. Happy to be here. Cool to see and meet some new fellas. What's up, everybody? And just happy to be with you guys this evening on this awesome Monday night panel around the table sports, everybody.
Let's get it. Jay, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing great, man. It's been a while. I'm glad to see that we've returned to our old roots and returned this great round table of conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one this evening. Jason, my man, how you doing?
Man, it's been a while. Man. I thought I was out of the loop. Shit. But glad to be here, though. So good times. Glad you started this back up, man. It's always good to be on your show.
Absolutely. Coach Sean, how you doing, man?
I'm good, bro. I'm good, man. I made it. Traffic. I found me a little detour to get home a little sooner. Hey, I'm ready to rock, man. See my partners on panel. Let's go.
And Coach Smook, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm in here ready to crank it up, man. I'm always ready, man. Glad to be with the fellas, of course, man. Got my bros, Jake, Sean, Ty, then got PG and everything. Jay Unfair, I'm catching you, bro. I got a ponytail back here, Jay. You can't see it, as you know what I'm saying. I'm catching you, though. Give me about 6 more months. And what's up, Jay? I just met Jay over there, so good to meet you, man.
Hey, good to meet you, man.
Yes, sir.
I've been
Yes, sir.
watching your show a lot, man. You got a fun show, man. You got to bring the energy.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Look, KT in here talking about we done made a super group. Yeah, we like the Golden State Warriors right now. Kevin Durant, everybody in there. Let's go.
Well, guys, we wanted to talk about so much new in college football. All these conferences are basically brand new. And I wanted to start with the Big 12. Whenever we're talking about these new conferences, who could be poised to make a run? Because I want to hear from y'all when we start on the Big 12. I am as excited about Big 12 football as I have been in a while because PG, Jay, Jason, y'all will appreciate this. For the longest, it's been Oklahoma or who's going to have a surprise year, whether that's TCU, whether that's Kansas State. Sark has really done great work at Texas, getting them back up to form, right? But now Texas and Oklahoma are gone. And dare I say, y'all are now where you should be. I have often said, Jay, you know this, I have often said Texas and OU are SEC fan bases, they're SEC teams in the making, right? I think you're both going to benefit from being in the SEC. I think the SEC is going to benefit from having you. But dare I also say that the Big 12 is going to be glad to have y'all gone because now they don't have to try and go against the two teams in the conference that are going to out-recruit everybody, out-scheme. Well, Kansas State, shout out to them. They do some crazy.
Wow.
Well, listen, I'm not saying they're better. I'm just saying that outside
I didn't
of OU
say
and
you said
Texas,
it better. You know that's a
Kansas
sore
State.
spot. That's a sore conversation. Bill Snyder's been haunting Oklahoma since the 90s. What are you doing?
I know. But listen, it is what it is.
That was a low blow, Ty. I ain't
Right at the Nuggets.
Taking
Right
shots
at the
right away.
Nuggets.
We ain't even a good 3 minutes in, and he.
It is what it is. It is what it is. But gentlemen, when I look at the new Big 12, I have some questions. First off, who's poised to make a run now that the boogeyman in Oklahoma is no longer in the conference? Because y'all have owned that conference for the majority of my life. I'm 29 years old. The majority of my life, Oklahoma has just stamped that conference unless you have your oddball years. TCU, great work there. Kansas State has done some good stuff, but let's be honest. I look at Utah with Kyle Whittingham, and holy cow, I am so excited now that we get the Holy War back, Utah-BYU rivalry in conference. You get the Arizona State rivalry. That was in conference, but it remains in conference. Gentlemen, I'm going to open it up to PG. Which Big 12 team are you looking at to possibly make a run? And lest we forget, UCF has been doing crazy work in the transfer portal, and they're a fun one to watch. PG, what are you thinking, man?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's UCF because right behind Florida State, they might be the best team in the state of Florida. Because
Don't
I'm
let
looking.
High Top hear that.
Listen, I'm looking at Miami and Florida and going, "What y'all doing?" But no, UCF's a good one. But if I'm looking at new teams coming in, I'm right with you. Utah. I think they get Cam Rising back this year for one more year. Like, isn't this like his 10th, 11th something year like that? Like, he's been around forever
at this point, right? He's got a 401k, he's got a retirement plan going, and they get that tight end back who's real talented. Keith. I apologize for butchering the name, but continue.
No, I mean, but I here's the deal, though. I look at the Big 12 and I say this is now a battle of who can develop a mediocre program the best. Like Oklahoma State, we look at them every year and go, they're not going to win more than 6 games, and then they'll pull off 9 wins. You got Utah out there, like they make the most out of what they have. K-State, I'm curious to see which program now is going to be the best at developing these mediocre talent or programs, as I should say.
And you're firing shots.
Damn.
Screw the Big 12. Screw the Big 12. We're out of there.
Damn. Screw those guys. That's a good take. I like that. I think the team to watch, right? I mean, you got so many now, especially with these super conferences. It's pretty interesting. I think, I really want to say Utah, right? They come from the Pac-12. They come from my land, the land of the Pac-12. But at the same time, I have to give credit to some of the things that I think Colorado is doing. Oddly enough, I'm going to shout them out. And I'm going to say, if Colorado improves their offensive line and their defensive line play, okay, I think they can start the fire again. I'm going to give it to Dion. I'm going to say, Dion, can you do it? Can you do it? I know, hey, don't get me wrong. That's going to be a controversial one right there, right? But at the same time, that's why I threw it out there, because I think that's a hell of a topic. And I think it sticks to exactly maybe what the Big 12 needs, that type of energy. And Dion's bringing it in with Colorado. So I'm going to say that's my team to watch.
Jay, before I pass it to you, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Jay, when you go, they return Weaver. They return Jimmy Horn. Amarian Miller is still there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in between
Travis
those
Hunter.
3 right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not to mention you already know I was getting there. Not to mention Travis Hunter. That's a hell of a wide receiving unit. Like that's genuinely a dangerous unit. If their offensive line improves, defensive backfields are going to have a hard time stopping that. And I don't care how you feel about the social media shenanigans of Shadur. First off, he's a kid. I say kid loosely, right? Anybody younger than me is a kid, so understand what But 2, the guy can play quarterback at a real high level. Jay, talk to me about the Big 12.
Yeah, and to add to that, like you mentioned, Travis Hunter, that wide receiver room. Shout out to Phil Lodeholt, former Sooner, former Minnesota Viking, now is the offensive line coach. So they got a dude that played in the NFL that's teaching them and trying to get their intangibles better, so that offensive line can really produce something. He's young in the game, but at the same time, he is fresh from coming from Minnesota and Oklahoma in the last couple of years as an assistant. So being under Bill Beatonbow, in which Ty you hold in very high regard.
Very.
Hopefully he's learned a lot, and boom, we see some growth out of him. But Jake, it's interesting you mentioned Colorado, because Colorado's really they're definitely a dark horse team to pick in this situation, right? Because Coach Prime has seen so much turnover over the last 2 years. It's like 80-something last year. They're at 60-plus this year. And he's trying to refresh his roster in a way a la Lane Kiffin down there at Ole Miss, trying to be the portal king and see what he can do and see if that's going to be a sustainable thing, right? He's living more in the portal than he is in recruiting, but I digress. The easy answer, as PG mentioned, is Oklahoma State. Look, this is the one thing about Oklahoma State. We clown them. They're our little brother. But you know that Mike Gundy has had 1 losing season the entire 20-something years he's been there? Literally 1 losing season. That is absurd to think that there's a coach that can do that. And it's just he never puts it together at the right time, right? He'll get his 10-win seasons. But it's just but the thing is as much as I want to clown him for being a quote-unquote choker here, Jason, he still is only got one losing season. Not too many people can say that, even through the Big 12 conference, as easy as we want to tell ourselves it is, he still ain't done it. So the easy answer should be Oklahoma State, but we know that they're not going to be able to maintain success because that's just not their
championship game every few years or whatever.
Yeah, that's not their MO. They're not going to be able to do that, right? So if there's a team that I'm going to pick, I'm going to follow in with Utah. I'm going to ride with probably K-State. I think Kleiman has put together a organization. It's funny because Pate mentioned this on Late Kick not too long ago. If Kleiman can get them up there and potentially win a Big 12 championship, can you put him in the conversations of a Bill Snyder, right? Since he's been there, non-COVID year, he's had winning seasons and he's competed for Big 12 championships every year, which is very fascinating to do, being in Manhattan where you don't have the resources of everybody else, right? Hell, look at Kansas. Kansas at the same time, Lance Leipold is doing – the Kansas teams may be the ones that cause the biggest ruckus outside of Utah, in my personal opinion.
The Kansas teams might start to make a name for themselves in college football, because if they win, if either one of those teams start to win a Big 12 championship and they actually, like, let's say, get to go to a college football playoffs, look at the amount of talent that's coming out of the Kansas City and Kansas area over the past 5 years. They're going to start hitting on a lot of those guys, like an Andrew Babaloa or a Deshaun Brame or any of those guys. Those teams will improve mightily.
Yeah,
Lincoln Kerr, that's one I love out of Kansas, man. That tight end, that dude, that's nasty, bro.
That dude's nasty. And Jason, before I pass it to you, I want the viewers to understand something right now. This is what's fascinating, and I will ask this on the turnaround. We have an answer for Utah. We have one for UCF. We have one for Colorado. We have one for K-State. We have 4 different answers right now, and that's going to lead us into a different conversation. And Jay, to your point, K-State gets somebody in the transfer portal that I think the heavens above didn't transfer to Missouri, and that's Dylan Edwards. Missouri loses Schrader, and if they would have gotten a hold of Dylan Edwards, that actually would have been a little bit like, okay, that's a huge win. He goes to K-State. Jason, talk to me about the new look Big 12.
I was sitting here writing down the teams, or just thinking, okay, what about this team? What about that team? I've got 10 freaking teams on here that could theoretically play for this thing. And that's including Okie Light, because, and I don't do that. That's including surprising. Okie Light, right?
That's surprising.
Utah, Arizona, I mean, Colorado, I think that something ain't right there, but I think that they've got a Heisman level quarterback. If they can keep the dude upright with their weapons, they can win in this league. UCF, Kansas State, BYU, Houston with Willie Fritz. Willie Fritz is getting it done in places that it hasn't been done in years. Even West Virginia, hell, TCU was in the national championship game 2 years ago, guys.
Yeah.
The fact of it is, we can sit here and throw darts at the damn wall and probably get closer to knowing what's going to happen. I love Jalen Daniels at Kansas. I think that if he can stay healthy, which is a big if, because he hasn't done it yet, if the dude stays healthy, Kansas I think they have the best coach in the conference. Aside, well, I say that, but you know how I am. I'm a big fan of Coach Witt at Utah as well.
Yeah, man, that's a hard one to compete with between Kansas and Utah coaching wise.
Yeah. And I mean, again, and I think Sonny's a good coach. He's done a good job at TCU. Look, there's a lot of this. One thing about this league is that it is not bereft of coaches outside of, Stillwater. Sorry. I'm just giving them.
I'm the only one that can Jake.
But seriously, there's a lot of teams. Kansas State, if you count them out, you're crazy, because they've got a 2-headed monster in the backfield there now with Dylan Edwards coming in as well. Look, man, I even. And we didn't even really talk that much about Arizona, but Noah Fafita and McMillan, these guys are real. I don't know that you could really pick a team and say, I believe in this team to go get it done. Even with a guy like Cam Rising, you cannot say unequivocally that Utah's going to go win this thing. If you are saying that, you're just being a homer.
Yeah, I need some help.
If you had to pick one, though, Jason, who would you?
I say Kansas. I like Jalen. I think
love
that if
that.
Jalen is healthy, I like Kansas. I think that they can go get it done. And because I think Lance Leipold, again, between him and Coach Witt, they're the two best coaches in the league.
Coach
Yeah.
Sean,
that one.
can't wait to hear from you about the new look Big 12.
I mean, to me, this conference, you could go either way, man. This conference has got a lot of solid teams and, exceptionally solid teams. I think Kyle Whittingham, to me, is the best coach in that conference. I love Utah's coach. I don't know if Utah will win this conference the first year, though. I don't know if they'll win this conference the first year. I do believe that UCF is not going to face competition. They hadn't faced competition every single week like they're about to face in the Big 12 this year. I think Oklahoma State is as solid as anyone, but I'm not sure Mike Gundy. He'll win all these great games, but he'll give up one at the wrong time every single year. For me, it's Kansas State. For me, it's Chris Kleiman. These guys were 94, I believe, last year, 6-3 in conference. I think Kansas State with Dylan Edwards, I think Chris Kleiman is an underrated coach, one of the best in that conference. I would not be shocked if Kansas State win the entire Big 12 this year. Believe that.
Tough to argue, man. And Coach, we hadn't gotten the pleasure of doing content together at the time, but whenever Alabama played Kansas State in that bowl game, I remember specifically making a video. And Coach Smook, you and I have talked about this. And my take on that was like, hey, Bama should win. But Kansas State is one of the more disciplined teams in all of college football. And if you're not on your P's and Q's,
They will capitalize.
They will be.
That's a fact. And listen. I think they got Oklahoma State, if I'm not mistaken. They played them at Oklahoma State last year. I think they got Oklahoma State in Manhattan this year.
That they do. Looking at the schedule now. Well, I'm gonna go against what my brother said. I really think Whittingham and Utah can pull it out this year. I like their receiving core, man. They're bringing like a good mixture of veterans. Cameron Rising, I think this is his year. Coming over as a transfer, coming into this system. This spread is very balanced. They got a deep running back room. A guy that they got in the transfer portal, Anthony Woods. I don't think many people are kind of tracking who this young man is. But Anthony Woods is no push though. He comes from Idaho. You go and look at where their offense came from. He's their offense. You get what I'm saying? So I like what I see from their roster. They always going to bring a solid defensive scheme. Their defense is very disciplined. That's what really allowed them to compete in the pack last year. I think injuries and just a lack of depth on the perimeter kind of kept them handcuffed a little bit. But I like Cameron Rising, man. I like his game for that conference, And Utah's going to bring a tough defense, something that the Big 12 is not necessarily known for. And you look at the teams that's added, they aren't necessarily top heavy defensive teams. So I kind of like what they bringing back. An experienced defense, a lot of experienced guys. You got a lot of red shirt freshmen who are coming in transfers. I think Kyle Whittingham is doing enough to keep these guys in a lot of games. And like I said, Utah is a disciplined team, man. Coming in this conference, and I'm looking at the conference schedule right now, man. And this is one of those things where Utah can literally come out and they have Oklahoma, not Oklahoma. Let me pull this back up. They have what's up?
No, Oklahoma State, right?
Yeah, is it State?
Yeah, they got Oklahoma State week 4 at Oklahoma State. If they come out and win that, like early, if they go into that game 3-0 and they win that one, I think they kind of cruise until they see maybe a BYU later in the season, because this team, I'm telling you, the experience is going to play out for them. And then the Colorado, I love Coach Prime in Colorado, but I can't believe, man, that portal stuff is hard to sustain. I know he can get kids to get up and play, but a lack of depth is always going to catch up with you, just like it did last year. So we yet to see, but I believe in Utah this year for the Big 12.
So one of the things I love, guys, is we did this, and out of the 7 people on this panel, we have 5 different answers. And some of you made great principled arguments for multiple different teams. Jay, you point out Oklahoma State, how they're a tough one. We have 2 votes for Utah, myself and Smook. We have 2 for Kansas State, Coach Sean and Jay. You have 1 for Kansas, a Colorado, and a UCF. I bring that up, and shout out to Jason. You're 100% right. Weaver is on to the NFL, right? So you do return a Jimmy Horn Jr. at Colorado, but Amarian Miller, watch out.
Yeah.
That guy
Yeah.
has real high upside. He might just boom this year and put college football on notice. Gentlemen, I'm not going to lie to you. There was one player from Colorado where I was sitting there always watching, being like, if you hit the transfer portal, let it be known that I hope everybody full court presses, because that guy, really talented. And one thing I love is he gets to rep, and they have the videos, him one-on-one against Travis Hunter. Come on. I would kill to be a fly on the wall of that practice, right? I bring all this to your attention to ask this question right here. And understand, my question, I'm going to be very poignant. I'm not asking if the Big 12 or the Big 16 or the Big, however many teams there are in it now, I'm not asking if it's the best conference. Is it the most competitive conference top to bottom, given the discussion we just had, or do we need to look at the Big 10, SEC, and ACC before we circle back to this conversation? Let's do a reverse order. Smook, Sean, Jason, and so forth.
Ask it again, because I want to make sure I'm answering it right. You get what I'm saying? Because I'm about to get real controversial. So
I'm not saying it's going to be the best conference. Where
Mhm.
if I
I don't
look,
think it's the best conference. No.
do I think that there's a Georgia, a Bama, an Ole Miss, an OU, or even a Tech? No, I don't. I don't. But top to bottom, I look at the new Big 12 and I think to myself, hey, this conference could cannibalize itself because it's just super competitive.
yeah.
Do you think that this is the most competitive of the Power Four conferences, not necessarily the best?
I'm going to say this, and I'm glad you clarified it. When you say competitive, there's a good competitive balance across the board. You don't have any team where they have multiple groups on either side of the ball that kind of just dominate their area of the field, or their, you know what I'm saying, that side of the ball. You get what I'm saying? You got spots in some places. You got a good mixture on most of these teams, a good mixture of veterans and young guys coming in. Not very many strong recruiting classes, coming into this. It's kind of like that. When you want to watch good games early in the day, this is the conference you want to watch, right? You want to, because you don't know who's going to show up. I feel like this is going to be one of those years. It may be one or two teams that start off real strong, but I still see this conference being what we've seen it being traditionally. You might have, like I said, one or two teams start strong and then kind of just start to fizz out. Losing Texas and Oklahoma kind of was the best thing to happen for this conference, honestly. And then the guys you add, you're like, okay, now we're seeing kind of a change of the landscape, not necessarily the regions, but how the game is played, a conflict of a clash of different schemes and styles. So I think this, like you said, this will be the most competitive and probably the most interesting conference to watch. And, it's one of those you just keep on your toes. You don't have to, it's not top heavy, it's not bottom heavy, it's kind of balanced across the board.
Coach Sean.
I don't think so. I'm going to tell you why. I think this conference, I think the reason why this is even a question is because you have a gang of teams that are similar, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that translates to being the most competitive. I do think Kansas State is going to beat Kansas. I think Kansas State is going to blow out West Virginia. I think you have a lot of teams that are similar in the preseason, right? But when you talk about most competitive, man, when you look at Oklahoma, you look at Texas, you look at LSU, you look at Auburn, you look at Ole Miss, you look at Bama, you look at Georgia, you look at going to Kentucky on a Saturday night. If you're not careful and take them lightly, going into Mississippi State with them god-awful cowbells, I don't think they're as competitive as the SEC from week to week. Now, I think the Big 12 is a like-minded conference, meaning you have a lot of teams with similar I don't want to say talent, but similar records that we can progress for the future. I'm not sure if that equals competitive, though, the most competitive, because when I look at Arizona State, I don't know how well they're going to do. I mean, we think Utah is going to be very, good. They were great in the Pac-12, but the offenses they're about to face in the Big 12 from week to week, I would dare say, are better than the Pac-12 from year to year. The offenses of Oklahoma State and spreading you up with those guys, then going on the road playing Kansas State, and all these different teams in the Big 12 are very high-powered offenses, man. I I don't know. Does that really equal the most competitive when you look at the defenses in the Big 12? So I would say no. The defense in the SEC. So I would say I don't think it's the most competitive league. I think it's the most balanced league as far as kind of like what Smook said. You don't have a great team and you don't have just a god awful team. I don't think. I think everybody's right there, but I'm not sure that equals best competitive or most competitive.
Jason?
I think it's the parity league, right? It's the parity league. This is what you have, and I think that I don't think that anybody's going to mistake them for an SEC top team or anything like that. I don't see this being good for the Big 12 either, because you don't have a program that's going to be, I'm not going to go so far as what PG said and call them completely mediocre, but they kind of are. They kind of are, and they're not. Most of them are never going to recruit at the level that you have to recruit at in order to be able to win a natty, particularly now in a 12-team playoff. You got to get through 3 games, 4 games, whatever however this thing ends up going out. I didn't bring up Iowa State a minute ago. I mean, I was talking about 10 teams. I didn't bring up Iowa State. I didn't bring up Texas Tech. Texas Tech was everybody's dark horse last year to go and win the Big 12. Now, they didn't do it, but they have a guy that's, a lot of people believe that he was the reason behind Baylor being good a couple of years ago and winning that conference. And part of the reason that Matt Rule was doing so well before he left. Listen, I think that there's a lot of parity there, but I think that's what it is. It's parity. None of these guys are going to recruit now. Where I think that they can win some games in the playoff and continue to stay at least somewhat relevant is that this is not going to be a league that you're going to get a bunch of guys that are looking to leave all the time. Now, maybe some of them will, but you're going to keep a bulk of your guys to be able to develop them a lot longer than, I kind of look at it like old college basketball when they first started doing the one and done. And, the teams that were in there that were competing really well were those schools that they didn't have freshmen All-Americans. They had a bunch of seniors that were 2-3-star guys, but they learned to play ball together. And I think that that's what you're going to get out of the Big 12. Whoever gets through that gauntlet, which is going to be a gauntlet, you're going to have a lot of cannibalizing each other, I think is what we're getting at. I think the competition between themselves is going to be great, and I think it's going to be fun football to watch. I just don't know how they translate to the next level up. And I do think that from time to time, you're going to probably see them knock off, a favored team or something like that out of the playoff, just because of the fact that they've been there and been developed for longer.
Jay, what you thinking?
Yeah, no, I'm glad Jason brought that up because that's actually where I was going. And honestly, to answer your question, do I think this is one of the competition within the conference? Is it going to be the best one out there? I'd say it's not going to be at the bottom. That's the one thing I'll give to them. They may actually be second in this, to be absolutely honest. And I say that because of this reason. As Jason mentioned, Iowa State wasn't even mentioned in this, right? Mm-hmm. Matt Campbell is considered a great coach by a lot of people, right? He was one that was up for a lot of jobs. Every time you consider him, because he was able to make lemonade out of really, really bad lemons on a regular basis, right? But you got to remember this too. Coming into next season, they're ranked number 2 in the nation in returning production, coming back at 85% of their production from last year returns next season. And we know what Matt Campbell does when he actually has a bunch of his dudes returning. He shows out. Second in returning offense at 90% and 80% on defense, which is 5th in the country. He's bringing back a lot of talent. And so if you add him to the middle of the pack, teams it's going to be tough to go against. Oklahoma State's they're 4th. They're bringing back 77%. That's the one thing I keep in mind when I look at these Big 12 teams. And this coach kind of mentioned a minute ago, he was talking about how a lot of them are basically the same. I think that the styles make games, right? Ty, you say this all the time. That's kind of one of your staple statements, right? Between you and, I just had a whole moment. Fanatic Perspective. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, because
Steven.
You and Steven. Yeah, Steven. Exactly. Y'all always talk about that. I think that's what's going to make this probably will be the most fun conference in the country. I'll say it that way because every single game is going to be a show. every single one of them. It's either going to be a really good defensive show from like an Iowa State going up against West Virginia, or it's going to be just the offensive gauntlet between, or we'll make it even better. We'll say Iowa State versus Utah as far as like a defensive gauntlet. That'd be an absurd defensive game. Or you can have just high flyingness from like an Oklahoma State playing against Arizona. You're going to get all kinds of the spectrum. If they play each other, they do, they don't, it don't matter. My point is, a lot of these games are going to be fun. So I'd say it's going to be the most fun league to watch because just as Coach Smoot mentioned, this is the game you want to watch in the afternoon, right? You're just going to turn this on at, at 12:30, right? A little tune-up before waking yourself up before you get to them afternoon games you really want to watch, right? Or your team at night. If they play them place them properly, you will lose that 2:30 to 3:30 nap you used to be able to get when there wasn't really no light playing at that time. You can't drink up into that game and go to
Thursday,
sleep.
Friday too. That they're going to try to start doing that. I think.
Right.
I think
Right.
So is doing the best he can with what he has. I think
So like midday, you're not going to be able to get that nap in because you're going to actually want to stay up and watch some of the high fly because it's going to be so much action. So I think it's going to be the most exciting. I don't think it's the most competitive. I'll probably put it third behind the two big dogs.
Jake.
Man, Jay nailed it. That's probably the right route I was going to go, is just because of the standpoint. And you're right. You're going to see a variety of offense. You're going to see either really good defensive games. And in general, these teams, again, from a recruiting standpoint, they all are very similar. I would say maybe you have, again, I've been kind of hot on Colorado, and just because of the way Deion's been going about his business. I mean, the guy pulls in some people we don't expect Colorado to pull in. Colorado is not it's a hard place to recruit. Just look at the years of history at Colorado. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I remember taking a visit to Colorado. It's cold as hell. Yeah, it's a beautiful stadium. Summertime's great. It's sunshine, but it's cold as hell. Okay. And on top of that, like, Boulder's a unique place. Let me just put it that way. It's very unique in the sense of people. Okay. It's very colorful. All right. So I'll tell you right now.
Hippie.
Yeah, it's interesting, put it that way, right? So I'm from Seattle, I can say a whole lot of things,
right?
I get you, but I'll tell you, but I do say from what Deion's been able to do there is impressive. And again, going back in some of these teams, I'm excited to see UCF and what UCF does with Gus Malzahn. I think he really loaded or filled in some holes, what he needed within his offense to run what he likes to run. Obviously, we've talked about UCF. PG brought up UCF being like that, probably the second best team in Florida right now. Then that's a great. I mean, hey, that's a sock in the face to what I don't know which teams you're talking about, whether it's Miami, Florida State, or Florida, as the other 3 and 4, right, PG? But at the same time, it's going to be fun to watch. It will be exciting. Is it the premier games? No, I think competitiveness regarding going into, especially with the 12-team playoff now, you have to hand that to the SEC. There's just way too much on the line for every single weekend in the SEC.
PG.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be probably the most fun conference. I don't think it'll be the most competitive. One of the things that I'm really curious to watch, though, with the Big 12 is what team or teams actually step up and potentially make themselves, like, I'm not going to say superpowers in college football, but make themselves every year somebody that we talk about as a national contender in the college football playoffs. Because somebody from the Big 12 or multiple teams are going to take that spot from OU and Texas. And I'm just curious to find out who's that going to be. Like, who's going to change that narrative over the next 5 years? Like, is it a Lance Leipold at Kansas who, quite honestly, I don't think he's leaving there. He had opportunities to. I don't think he's leaving. Or is it going to be a Kansas State who has traditionally always been right behind OU and Texas in the Big 12? Or is it a Joey McGuire down at Texas Tech who has done a phenomenal job on the recruiting trail and continues to try to make waves? Like, I think the Big 12 is going to draw in a lot of talent, whether it's through the transfer portal or through the recruiting trail. And I think they're going to be a fun conference, but I don't think they're going to be the most competitive.
Let me get to this real fast. Alan Berry, thank you for the $5. Top 5 coaching staffs in the conference. We'll get to that, Alan. I think that's a unique one. Guys, I'm going to have a little bit of a different perspective on this. because I agree with what Jay said. If I'm looking at this in terms of best, I think the Big 12 will come in as the third best conference. The debate to me in terms of competitive, because when we say competitive, we're talking about it within the conference, right? Not on a national stage, but within the conference. To me, the debate is between the SEC and the Big 12. When I look at the Big 10, it's like, okay, you have Michigan, who has to replace a lot. Ohio State and Oregon are the two teams that you're like, okay, they're poised to really make a run. The reason why I would put the Big 12 above the Big 10 in terms of competitiveness, we have no idea who's going to make a run at the Big 12. It could be anybody. Whereas with the Big 10, when we get there, I think most people would be right to say, hey, watch Ohio State, watch Oregon. Washington has to replace a lot. USC has made good hires, but now you don't have Caleb Williams. You have a lot you have to work through at USC. So to me, the debate is between the SEC and the Big 12 for the most competitive conference. And I think with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma, I give the SEC the nod, but I would have to put the Big 12 as the second most competitive conference out there whenever we're just looking at the battle within the conference, not the battle on the national stage. Because I agree, if we're talking about the most dangerous conference, which teams out of the conference, they're going to be third. Right, the SEC will be first, the Big 10 will be second, and then the Big 12 will come in third. But I
got
just
a
think,
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask you guys, and PG brought it up that who's going to be that next Texas, Oklahoma that's going to lead this conference. I don't know that there is anybody that's going to do that, because I think that year to year it's going to be hard to do that. Do you guys think that somebody steps up and becomes that cream of the conference? That they're always there. 3 out of 5 years that they're always there.
If I can interject, I think what you all were saying about Kansas State, I think they're on the way. Like, really, Chris Kleiman and Kansas State, like you guys said, all it's going to take is one of those big win seasons, and they can secure the state, man. Like,
what about Lance Heupel? That guy?
That's my argument.
I mean, same with him. I think there can be one or two. Like, you can have another 1 and 2 in this conference. I really think that, and I mean early. Kansas State is probably the most poised. Utah, I'm still feeling them strong, but I really think Kansas State has a chance to make that push. You get what I'm saying? Like, they're poised for it. I feel like they're poised for it.
Yeah, I think it's got to be UCF. They're in the state of Florida, very talent rich. They're around some of the biggest high schools in Florida. I think that if they can get some winning seasons under their belt, like, because of the talent they're surrounded with, and with Florida and Miami being down, they might have a chance to really make a name for themselves. And if they get that kind of talent, like, they not only could just contend for the Big 12 championship.
What about Houston and Willie Fritz, where they've got a talent-rich environment right down there too that they haven't been able to pull from for all these years because they've been playing in a trash conference. Now they're in the Big 12, and now they have a coach that is the real deal.
The problem with Houston is you got Texas and Texas A&M in the conference that are both relevant.
In the
Florida
SEC
is falling out of relevancy, and so is Miami.
Divine relevant.
Well,
they keep getting 5-star classes. They keep getting top 5 classes. That's right. Relevant. Yeah. That's relevant enough.
Yeah,
that was just me taking a shot.
I'm just saying UCF that's got to be the team in the Big 12 you watch that says if they don't take a spot of Oklahoma or Texas, it's disappointing.
Yeah,
right. I'll go on record and say this. Look, I'll go on record and say this right now. Your new teams in the Big 12, your Arizona State, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, who else? UCF. I'll go on record right now, and outside of Utah, now they're exempt from what I'm about to say. Outside of Utah, there will not be these new teams. None of those new teams will go to the Big 12 championship. Mark my words on that.
You don't think Arizona's got a chance?
No, that's what I'm saying. I don't think none of the new teams that's entering the Big 12 will make their championship game. I think it'll be the same old. I think Kansas State, Oklahoma State. I don't think outside of Utah. Now Utah could. Outside of Utah, I don't see any of these newer teams, not even UCF, with the week competition they'll face in their first. Not even Arizona. I don't believe that. I don't believe they'll make the Big 12. I don't agree with that, but
because Arizona
UCF is about to face competition. week to week
Yep.
like they hadn't faced in years, right? UCF is poised for the future to be great in that conference. But this first year, on a week-to-week basis, Oklahoma State 1 week, Kansas State the next week, Kansas the week after that, Utah the week. I don't think UCF is going to make it this first year. I think it's going to be the same old Big 12 teams. Maybe that's Oklahoma State, maybe that's Kansas State, but I do not believe, outside of probably Utah, that these new teams will make that championship game.
Do you
Jay,
count Colorado
honestly-
as a new team?
Yeah.
Since
Yeah,
they were in the Big 12 before and they won a national championship in the Big 12.
I mean, that was years ago.
It's a long ass
That
time
was
ago.
before you were born, PG. You weren't even alive at that point.
Right.
I was in diapers watching
That
Cordell
don't
Stewart
count.
throw the
Well,
ball.
and,
So
and they have
I
Jesus
digress.
on their side. So
I
let's be
would
honest.
coach on that. I think it's going to be tough for a lot of the new teams. Like Arizona lost a lot, right? And they lost their head
Fact.
coach. They've got a whole new staff. They're starting things from scratch. Yes, they brought back Noah Fafita as well as T-Mac. So him and T. McMillan could potentially go out there and try to do most of it themselves, but they still got a lot to figure out, right? It's a new
Yep.
coach.
Fact.
Yeah,
Got to
I
give
love
them a
it.
year. Now, the year after next season, once
Yeah,
they kind of
right.
align how they do things with this new coach, because they're both young. Oh yeah, it's a different story. Arizona's going to be a monster right after that. It's going to take them a year with the new guy, but yeah, looking through it, we're looking at all the new teams, right? I mean, as much as like we like clowning and making jokes on it, Dave Aranda still knows what he's doing, and he may get Baylor back to where they need to be, right?
Yeah.
He's
That's a
coaching
fact.
for his life. He's coaching for his job. So he could end up trying to figure things out. As I mentioned with Iowa State, and Jason mentioned them, Iowa State's bringing back, so much production, and that's
5 years,
perfect
5 different champs,
for
man.
Matt
That's what I
Campbell,
think.
right? Right? Perfect for Matt Campbell and what he does. We don't have Hunter Deckard out there throwing interceptions and making bad bets. He's good. He's got a whole new setup there at Iowa State. So it's gonna be a whole new. So I think with the incumbents of the Big 12, even with West Virginia, man, Neil Brown led them to a 9-4 season last year, right?
Yeah,
we kind of we kind of overlooked what they did even way out there in Morgantown. I think that the incumbents from the Big 12 are going to continue to push things. I can't jump on the Utah train until I see a Cam Rising
That's a fact.
healthy.
Yeah.
If I can get a healthy Cam Rising, same thing I feel about Kansas. Jalen Daniels has been hurt 2 years in a row.
I know.
Until you on the field,
No.
you don't exist to me.
Man.
That's why
And I didn't even think about that
with
with my Utah. I didn't even think about that with my Utah take. Like Cam Rising hasn't finished the season. You get what I'm saying? Like
that's it. And that's the
Yeah.
only reason why I'm saying it's not even. I put it to you this way, and my Texas fans in the chat are gonna hate your boy for this, but I feel the same way about Quinn Ewers. We ain't seen him play a whole full season yet, anyway.
That's
Since
right.
the
I have
sophomore year.
questions. You got to finish the season for me to even feel comfortable with saying that. Oh, okay, there's a chance that you can do something, right? I felt the same way about Dylan Gabriel when he was with us. He's had 2 seasons where he was hurt. So until I see a full season out of you healthy, I mean, a lot of situations
fact.
it's not on you. I can't ordain you until that happens. Now, granted, backup for Texas. You got Arch Manning or whatnot, and everybody's praising him. I'm curious to see what these backup situations look like because Utah lost theirs, right? The kid that came in, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he ended up transferring because he realized Cam Rising is going to take this job back and I ain't going to get a chance. I'm
Yeah.
not going to sit behind him. Jalen Daniels ain't got no backup this year. I think Bean's gone. If I'm correct. Did he graduate or is he back one more year?
He's he's either NFL or UFL.
Okay, so Bean's gone. Then what? Right? So we don't have that quarterback that technically started more than Jalen Daniels did and be able to put up the numbers like he did. There's a lot of questions there. So for me, it's I got to see some people be healthy. If I can see that, then I can jump on some trains.
Now
Okay.
we can disqualify Baylor from these conversations, right? Because they're about to get hit with more sanctions, right? So we can disqualify them.
I don't know about any sanctions
Shoot,
yet.
I would disqualify him just from the standpoint of what happened to their coaching staff so late in the year.
Yeah,
It got torn apart. Bama grabbed 2 of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I think you guys, I got to say this. Coaching staff changes are really hard to deal with. I committed to a guy, and next thing I know, a month later, he went to Chicago Bears. If the transfer portal was open, would I have taken it? I don't know. There's a chance I would have, to be honest with you, back in the day. At least one, and that's those circumstances where you would want to take it. Now, I'd say this. There's been a ton. You look through this from coaching changes and whatnot. I will say from a standpoint of the Big 12, though, you look through what they have, there is some consistency in some of these things. Like right now with Kansas and Kansas State, those are my two arguments as far as coaching staff wise. Those guys, I just feel really good about what they're going to do and then the amount of talent that they're bringing out. I'm not going to argue against UCF though, because I think if Gus Malzahn can put it together, UCF could really shock a lot of people. I mean, he has
KJ Jefferson.
He's a beast. I mean, that guy's a big man. But at the same time, I think Gus Malzahn, I mean, he's done it before. Let's see if he can do it again.
That's true. PG, I'm disappointed. How did you fall for a fake tweet about Baylor being under sanction again?
It was on the 247 boards.
PG,
Is that
the fake tweet millennial I've ever seen.
PG's always the one that falls for it, man. It's always cracks me up. He'll send to me like, "Hey, man, did you see this? Dog, it's fake. Look at the account. Dang it! Never fails."
No, I actually didn't see it on Twitter. I saw it on the 247 boards.
Well, let's. I'm gonna go ahead and move
where
us
it originated.
forward, right? I think to quickly answer this one, and I'd like to just. I think any combination of Utah with Whittingham, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kansas State, Kansas. I think those three. As much as it pains me, Oklahoma State. And then the fourth, like, how do you value Gus Malzahn as opposed to maybe a Joey McGuire, who, if you talk to the guys in the state of Texas, they love that guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
he was the head of the High School Coaches Association in Texas. That's like being president.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think that you're looking at any combination of those teams right there, Alan, for your top coaching staffs, but. Because we still have a super conference to talk about, and we're already 46 minutes in. That's how great of a conversation that was. Let's go to an easy one. Let's go to the ACC, right? Because when I look at the ACC,
easy.
Yeah.
It's trash.
What?
Yeah.
Holy bejesus.
Touche, fair. It's fair. I think you are right. It's going to be a lot easier.
Like,
Yeah,
okay,
it's easier.
and the Big Ten, I think we kind of fall into the same thing, where the Big Ten is very top-heavy. Where it's like the SEC and the Big 12, you can genuinely argue for multiple different teams, right? Like, I don't know that we can do that in good conscience about the ACC or the Big 10 at the same rate. Let's go to the ACC. Jay, I'm going to start with you, then go Jake, PG, then Smook, Sean, Jason, and I'll round us out. I got to keep y'all on your toes. You got to switch things up.
If we're going to remember that order.
Just straight down the line, and then we're gonna snake it, right? It's gonna be good.
We're gonna go backwards like that. All right. So ACC. Are we doing the top 5 coaching staffs?
Well, I kind of answered that real quick in the Big 12.
No.
I put any combination of Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and whether you value McGuire out at Texas Tech or Gus Malzahn at UCF, and I think that. But I really do like what Colorado has assembled. I just have to see it first, right? I think other teams have given us a bit more proof. So, on to the ACC.
I'm in the exact same way. So, ACC, you want to talk about who could potentially run that conference, right? Who do we feel like is going to win it? Or are we doing coaching staffs again?
No, we're just kind of same conversation as the Big 12. Like, who are
just
you looking at in that conference to be like, hey, that's a solid one?
So you're right. I mean, you're right, because if you look at the ACC, when you add SMU in there, which they may be a big sleeper out there, right?
I know.
And then you've got all of the 2 schools out west with Cal and Stanford. And Cal has been pretty sneaky in the transfer portal. You keep your eyes open. They've been doing some things. They've been out there working a little magic, right? So
Cal plays defense.
Right, exactly. They're trying to really up the D, but the problem is, pause. But you've got. This is the bad part about the ACC, right? This is the bad part. You've really only got one team in that conference right now. Maybe Clemson, but Florida State's the squad there, right? And I say that because of this, right? So Florida State went out, got them another transfer quarterback. They got DJU. Now, we can make as many jokes as we want to, but I want to point something out that I got to give a shout out to Josh Pate on this because he made some good sense.
Shout out.
We've seen some quarterbacks go multiple places and look so much better after moving around, right? I can't even talk too much noise because at Oklahoma, we had 3 dudes play for a Heisman Trophy that were all transfer quarterbacks, right? You had, Kyler and Baker who were transfers. and they won the Heisman. And then you had Jalen Hurts come from Alabama to Oklahoma, ends up second in the Heisman Trophy conversation. So as much as I would like to clown that, kind of can't. But if DJU shows up the way that Florida State needs him and the way that Mike Norvell runs things, there's a chance they could continue to be consistent with things. Now, there is an argument for Clemson, and the argument for Clemson is Klubnik gets a second year under Garrett Riley. That could make that a difference maker. And right, and their defense is still, it's not what it used to be with Brent Venables, but it's still good enough to do damage in the ACC. And so it's not national championship level. That's what Brent brought them. But as far as going in the conference, they can fight for something. But if anything, I'm thinking Florida State's probably still going to continue to run that conference this next season. I just don't know what the heck they look like after that, because they have not really been able to bring in a quarterback that made me say, oh, you guys are really good.
Fair. Jake.
Mine's Miami. I'm going to be honest with you guys.
I look for somebody to say Miami.
I know everyone's going to hate it, but dude, I'm going to tell you guys what. Cam Ward is on another level. You guys want to talk about quarterback? Cam Ward, from a standpoint, the guy's going to be in the Heisman talks. I will tell you that. He will be in the Heisman talks. The guy that you put that kid, you take him out of Pullman. You guys got to understand where Pullman is at out here. Pullman out here in Washington is in no man's land. I mean, there is absolutely damn nothing out there besides Moscow and a murderer just down the road, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy. And I'm sorry, that's a bad jab. I shouldn't say that. That's fucked up. But here's the deal. You know, like, the truth is Pullman has nothing out there. Their fan base is amazing. Happy for their fan base, 100%. Like, they got a strong fan base from only filling the stadium to what, 40, 50,000, right? And I have a lot of love for WSU. I do, even though, you know, I've kicked their ass for so long playing at Washington. But I'll say this is Cam Ward is on a whole nother level. And, you know, I think Cristobal is in a point. He has to put it together.
Yeah.
He has to put it together. You can't have Tyler Van Dyke and screw up and have Cam Ward and screw up. It doesn't work like that. Then you'll be on the hot seat real quick. All right. And you look at the amount of transfers and what they did in the portal. They were pretty strong. Okay. I will say they did a good job. They're one of the teams everyone's going to say from a portal standpoint, they did all right. But I also say this is like, he has to put it together. Like, there's too much money. Yo.
And Ty can David attest to this. When we was on the Bleacher Report during our weekly show with him,
Jake and I were the leaders of the Cam Ward
Dog.
fan club this past year.
Dude's a monster.
Monster.
He's a monster, right? And like you said, if they can put it together, he's a beast. That's all I got to say. And I mean, he did come from Incarnate Word too, which, I mean, yeah, outside of San Antonio, is that really a city? I mean, Charles Barkley been clowning it for years. Just FYI.
And he also went after Galveston, right?
He did.
Yeah.
And
Talking about that beach.
The whole state of Texas hates Charles now.
as being the guy from Texas, he's not wrong about Galveston. PG, talk to me about the ACC.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not going to go with the obvious answer of Florida State. So I'm going to say Clemson, because if Dabo hands over the reins of the offense to Garrett Riley, like, Clemson's going to be pretty scary. Like, I felt like Clemson let some of these guys walk in Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis, and then they just replaced them with more superstars, because they're out there still recruiting at a really high level. If Dabo would just hit the transfer portal, Clemson would be a national championship contender.
It's
quite that simple. It's black and
we'd all
white.
be drunk. Shout out to Shady Mile.
True.
Yeah, so no, I got to go Clemson. They've got talent at the wide receiver position, so Klubnik's got weapons. This will be his second year starter, right? Second year starting, so he'll definitely improve. And then that defense, I mean, they returned Barrett Carter, and that's all I need to know.
Their turn, and Peter Woods, who is a absolute monster. So I'll go quickly on this. I don't disagree about, and I know Jant's right. He would get after me about this. I think Dabo is a very good coach. If we're just talking about the X's and O's, I still think he's one of the top coaches out there.
I can hear him cussing now.
I know. My boy Jant's is out there just like, how you mother. But I do. I really think so. But gentlemen, they lost some games last year that they shouldn't, and that offense has not looked the same since, dare I say, 2020 was the last time their offense was just like, wow, this is dangerous. This is something I have to. Now, Will Shipley's not there anymore, right?
Unless they gave him a 9th year. Unless they gave him a 9th year.
Yeah, but
He
their
drafted?
backup running back was already kind of taking the spot from him
Yeah.
anyways. He was
Yeah.
getting more carries by the end of the year last year anyway.
Yeah, but
Bill
he was
Mata?
such a integral part of just having that offense go. Even though it was a split situation,
He's an Eagle right now, so he's in Philly.
I don't know, man. Like, I do have Clemson. I have some questions about Clemson. I don't dislike the answer, right? I think that there's a very principled reason. Now, to me, it's between Clemson and Miami. Jay, I don't think you're wrong about Florida State, but this is what I'll say about Florida State, man. Last year, and you'll remember, I made this argument to you very early on in the year last year that I didn't like their offense. I loved Keon Coleman, loved the other wide receiver, thought Jordan Travis was phenomenal.
Yeah.
They didn't have a great run game, and their offense looked like your little brother playing Madden. Call go routes. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. DJU hasn't been, let me see, when was the last time? DJU has, last year is coming off of a year where he was at 57% completion percentage. I don't know that I'm really counting on him to take over that team and deliver them to the promised land. I think Cam Ward's probably the best quarterback in that conference. And Jake, I agree with you. We talk a lot about Napier being on the hot seat because he's got that hellacious schedule. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if Miami doesn't get some stuff going, Cristobal is going to be on the hot seat. First off, he lost to a 4-letter acronym team.
Oh my God. That's
Need I say more?
So did Auburn.
So, that's beautiful. One more time, Jason. Who else did that?
Yeah, Auburn.
you better say it one more time for your boy.
Beautiful. New Mexico
Hey,
State and Middle Tennessee
I went to
State
New Mexico
University.
State, man. I'm good with that. So
My man. My man. No, that's not to say that I don't think Florida State won't be good. I think they will be good. But do I think they're going to be next level? I have genuine questions about that offense. Because last year, it genuinely looked like your little brother playing Madden. Call a bunch of go routes, throw it up in the air, and let one of those 6'4" monster wide receivers go up and get it. They don't have them anymore, right? I think that who's their best wide receiver from a talent perspective? Are we talking Malik
Jeez.
Benson?
yeah,
Maybe,
Yeah,
maybe, but he's Mr. Dropsy, so I mean,
He's had a hard time holding on to the ball. I don't know. I have some real questions about Florida State. Now, they did get some nice defensive additions.
Hakeem Williams is pretty good too. True sophomore. I don't know.
That's fair. That's fair. So I would go either Clemson or Miami. That's not to say that I don't think Florida State can't be a team. I don't know, man. I don't know. Jason, we'll go with you, Smook, and then Smook. Jason,
we know,
Sean, and then Smook. God,
the black guys with the glasses. We know. You got me when I called you Kyle. I got you back now. I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming, son. I've been waiting.
Just gonna let this play out for a minute.
Yep. Big pause.
That's foul.
I knew I was gonna get him, bro. I've been waiting. Dang, it took like 17 shows, bro. I'm ready. Let's go.
Let's go.
I don't know who to pick here, man. I think that I don't like the portal game that Florida State's playing because I think that you've got Dabo on one end of the freaking crazy spectrum, and you got Florida State on the other. And then you still got Seminole fans down there saying that they have the best culture in the ACC, which is insanity.
That's cool.
I really tell you, but how can you believe in Miami in Cristobal? I can't believe in Cristobal. The dude just needed to take a knee to beat Georgia Tech and didn't do it, and they lose.
Second time, by the way. Second time, 2017 versus Stanford.
I know it's not even the only time he's done it. I know we were on your show after that last year. It was insanity. Insanity, right? I tell you, I think this might be the year that you see somebody like NC State do this thing, because I do not believe in Clemson. And I think that, and I don't really trust NC State that much either, but I just think this league is not that good. I just think it's not that good, and they're falling apart as it is. I mean, SMU would be another team that might be able to get it done. But I'm not calling any of the big guys. I'm not. I think I'll go with NC State. I'll just leave it there.
I like that. That's
Me
a
too.
great pick. And before I pass
Stole
to
my
Coach
thunder.
Sean, The
Sorry.
reason why, Jason, I agree with you completely. Anybody that says, "Hey, I have very principled questions about Cristobal," I agree. My thing is if it's not now, when?
Yeah.
When? I think that he has as much pressure as any coach in the ACC this year, Coach Sean.
So listen, man, here's the deal. Let me just start with Miami. I'm never picking Miami. I don't give a damn if they go dig up Vinny Testaverde. I'm never picking them. This is a school that places 4,000 people at a home game. You're not winning nothing there, man. I don't care what you say. How much talent, Cam Ward. I watched them say the same thing with the De'Aaron King kid. We got De'Aaron King. Man, they were terrible. Scheme terrible. Defense terrible. Fundamentals terrible. Teammates whooping each other on the sideline. Fans fighting. No, I'm never picking Miami. Listen, we're missing the boat on NC State, man. This team was 6-2 in conference last year. I think 9-4 overall. Offensively, they still got the Grayson McCall kid. They still got the Waters kid at running back. They still got the Conception kid at wide receiver. Listen, man, Louisville, NC State is going to cause some noise in that conference. I'm trying to tell you. Miami, out of here. Syracuse, 2 more years, they coming. You know what I mean? We can easily say Florida State. We can easily say Clemson. Those two will be relevant forever in that conference, right?
Yep.
But don't overlook NC State here. I'm telling you. NC State here will make some noise in that conference. Miami, no. They got 4,000 people at a home game, bro. No. They travel 45 minutes to play in somebody else's stadium. No. It's over with for them, for me.
Now you said 2 years for Syracuse. Are they going to be in that conference in 2 years?
Probably not. Probably not. The way things are going with USC and the damn Big 10 now, with USC having home games from Los Angeles to Rutgers, New Jersey. You know what I mean? So, man, who do we really know? No, but I just like what Syracuse is doing. The coaching staff they got down there now, they actually recruiting now at Syracuse.
Yeah,
right.
Yep.
So, and don't take much in that conference. Trust me.
Yeah, don't worry. We're gonna have 5-10 team conferences once all of this lawsuit stuff goes down. We're gonna have the Pac-10 back. We're gonna have the Big 10 back. We'll have a new conference in the South. We'll have the SEC back to 10 teams. It's gonna be we'll
It'll
get
just
back
be
to it.
it'll be more pods is what we're going to be looking at probably instead of conferences. Yeah,
right.
NFC Central, NFC South, NFC. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I think or it could
the
be
more things change, the more they go back to the same.
And then the divisions within the conferences, that could very well be the case. Coach Smoot, talk to me.
Man, I'm gonna go with my gut, man. I feel like Louisville, how they kind of just revamped the offense. They went and got some guys in the portal. They got my boy Ja'Cory Brooks at wide receiver to add to that talent, man. And I think because of the lack of competitive balance in this conference, there's like nobody is a complete team in this conference. You don't have a team that has a great or a solid defense and a great offense, or a halfway decent offense and a great defense. Like nobody across this board. So I think it's going to be a lot of shootouts. And you look at the talent that's stacked at Louisville right now, and I like NC State too. I mean, if I had to go with a 1 and 2, Louisville and NC State, but a dark horse, I'm gonna tell y'all right now. And this team, y'all might laugh at me, but I like Duke, man. I like Duke to make a
Diaz.
Yes, bro. I mean, I like Duke to like maybe sneak 4 or 5 games that they shouldn't win out of this season. And I'm looking at the schedule now. They start off with Florida State.
Quarterback. They got the best quarterback
in that conference, right? And they start off with Florida State as their their conference opener. You get what I'm saying? So, and then they got North Carolina to follow that up. 2 teams that most people feel like are going to be towards the top half of this conference. You come out of and Duke handles those or wins close games against those. I think that builds momentum for them throughout the rest of their conference schedule. And in that conference, man, maybe not their out of conference games don't favor them. They got their cupcakes, but we don't know who shows up for Duke anymore. But I like the quarterback game. I like them as a dark horse in there, but Louisville would probably be the team.
Riley Leonard isn't there anymore. Riley Leonard transferred to Notre Dame and
he's at Notre Dame.
Malik Murphy.
Malik Murphy. Yeah.
Malik's a new quarterback.
I don't know.
I'm so glad he's not at Texas anymore.
I got a dark horse too. I got a dark horse that I want to throw out there too.
What's yours,
And
Jay?
I was thinking about them from the beginning, and like Coach Smook, y'all gonna probably laugh, but I was thinking about this from the beginning, and I was like, I'm gonna go chalk, right?
Mhm.
But when I would decide to go back and look at their schedule, this team may shock a lot of people. It's Virginia Tech.
Oh,
Let me
man.
explain why.
I
Yeah.
said it.
Virginia Tech
Good call, good
is
call.
the number one team in the country in returning production. They bring back 6% of their production.
Yeah.
Once you include all their transfers, which I think Bill Conley is going to update his SP Plus
They just got
this
Curtis
week.
Perry from Bama.
Exactly. They got Curtis Perry from Bama. They brought in Caleb Spencer, who's a linebacker that it commits to Oklahoma, decided to flip to Miami. He's transferred there. They brought in Kevin Gilliam from Oklahoma. They got a few pretty solid pickups there in the portal. Dog, man.
Back in Blacksburg, man.
Looking at their schedule, dog. They start their season off against Vanderbilt. We know that that's a dub, right? You got Marshall, Old Dominion, Rutgers. Then they travel to Miami. That's one challenging game. They got Stanford they travel to, which that's going to be a cupcake. Boston College, I question them. Heck, their coach quit and went to the NFL, right? That tells you enough you need to know about them. Ja Tech, which we always have questions about them because they struggle with just getting kids admitted into their school. Syracuse, which we say is a year away. Then Clemson comes to town, maybe a challenge. They go to Duke, maybe a challenge. And then Virginia comes to town, which I think they can win that game. I really only see 2 losses in that.
I'm gonna jump on board with you, Jay. You want to know why? Like looking over at these guys on a defensive standpoint, right? Well, you got Kelly Lawson's their leading tackler. He's back in the middle. You have a secondary who's very seniored, right? They are a tenured secondary, which is it's a big deal for them. And then you're right. I think you look at from a defensive line standpoint, Curtis Perry will fit in really well there. It's going to be it's a good fit for him, and I like it. I think he's going to be productive. And then who was it? Antoine Powell Ryland. Is that who you guys are talking about, right? I mean, he's that big boost from a defensive end. I think you're right. I think Virginia Tech probably is that dark horse from a standpoint. Just defensively, they look very sound.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that. That's a good
It
pick.
might be the year. I mean, just bringing back that much production, like you said, being tenured and senior, that usually always helps. And when Conley drops this list every year, that usually the teams that are in the top 5, their record just flips from what it was the year before to a much better one. Just because in college, the more senior you are, the better your team usually is because they're not making those silly young kid mistakes. And so
Ask Michigan.
they got a really good chance of shocking people.
We were talking about with the Big 12 guys. I think this is the same kind of stuff.
Ask
And these,
Michigan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Coach Sean, good point.
So
Michigan.
nobody's going to pick
good
North
point,
Carolina.
Coach. Good point, Coach.
Facts.
100%.
I thought about North Carolina PG, but I just don't know from a quarterback. You're replacing Drake May.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's too
That's
much
a hard-
place, bro.
That's
I mean,
it's a hard
And
place. And
defensively,
you're
they
looking at
suck.
your wide receiver room. I mean, and yeah, defensively, I guess I don't know. I can't say I sat there and studied their defense. So if someone can give me their defensive,
Smack Brown. Oh, they're ranked 127th in the nation. They bring back 37% of their production.
He was waiting for that one. He was waiting for that one. He was waiting for that Mac Brown shot.
Hey,
Listen,
I was looking at Mac Brown and them too, but when I saw that they're not bringing anybody, they're ranked 122nd in offense and defense in returning production, 37%.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised that nobody picked them because, like, North Carolina, like, there's always those people that like believe in North Carolina every year, and then
They'll win
elsewhere-
8 game, 8-4.
But you know,
I like
big
Mac,
media,
but I
big
don't
media,
think
they give North Carolina all this hype, just like they do Notre Dame every year. Like big media
Mistake.
always give these teams this hype because of this, like one season out of 7. Like North Carolina, I don't see it.
However, though, North Carolina's schedule's a cupcake schedule too. Like their
Yeah,
hardest
true.
game is at Florida State, and then on that schedule, they should be able to beat everybody else. Like,
man, they gonna drop 7 of those games they not supposed to.
We got Ephraim Davis with the $20 saying awesome content. Jens, thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody, for being in here. We have got some great people, great insight, great commenters, and none of this is possible without y'all. Then going over to Anthony, our resident Miami fan. Coach Sean didn't mean half the things he said. He did. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he meant it. I think that came from deep.
Coach
said it with his
Jonathan,
Hey,
coach is a
the
TC
truth-
from Miami.
listen, the truth is in the
Details.
details.
Yeah, I love it.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Anthony saying you can't rely on the portal like FSU has the past few years, and Norvell is not a great recruiter in high school. And listen,
He's
they
a
have
good coach,
really relied on the portal. I do agree. I think he's a good coach, but I am interested, Coach Sean, to see. I've always viewed the transfer portal as a Band-Aid. And
Mhm.
recruiting is where you're getting the majority of your work done. It's part of the reason why I'm very interested in a Colorado, what they're going to be able to do, and simultaneously very interested in a Florida State, especially. And Jay, you'll appreciate this. Norvell lost me whenever he was saying to everybody how, hey, my backup quarterback, we can go into the college football playoffs and win with my backup quarterback. And then he
His
instantly
third string.
goes and get a guy that's sub 60%. And he's like, you're now my starter. It's like, well, boy, you
Coach
didn't really
Bowden-
think highly of your backup quarterbacks if that's the case, did you?
Right.
Coach Bowden was probably rolling over in his grave that they treated the Orange Bowl the way that they did.
That's
Over
that
over
was
that
disgraceful, bro. That was disgraceful.
for all that shit they were talking about getting screwed. And I'm not saying they didn't get screwed, but for all that crap that they were saying about that, and then you go down there and you get beat by 60. I don't want to hear about your culture anymore, guys. I just don't.
Yeah, but they also had like a bunch of people sitting out in that game too.
That's
Like,
the problem.
that's a
That's
bad-
the
Well,
point
well,
he's
well,
making.
well,
you saw.
PG, that's what we're talking about.
Well, but in their defense, right? I'm gonna play the devil's advocate and contrarian on this one. All those dudes that sat out that bowl game, that Orange Bowl, were dudes that came back from the season before to play for the national championship. Jared Verse could have went top 5 2 years ago if he wanted to go into pros. Instead, he decided to come back with his brothers and play for a natty. They did everything they were supposed to do by going undefeated, and unfortunately, the quarterback went down, and they didn't get.
Well, hold on. Let me fight you on this.
Here we go.
Hold on. Good question. I think that's a weak excuse, and I'm gonna tell you why. Let me explain. You said you got screwed, right? You went undefeated in your conference. You won. You done all this. You lost your quarterback. You're still undefeated, right? Well, guess what? You one team from being on the outside looking in. You got Georgia. You go out and dominate Georgia. The whole world looking at you like, bruh, y'all champions. The whole world. You make a statement that's probably louder than the damn real championship by beating Georgia. You know what you do? You use that as an excuse. You don't play. We're gonna sit out. You weren't just playing anybody. You're playing a team that's won 30 straight games. You make a statement. One more game, just one. If everybody's down, Coach Saban, Coach, I'm
and I
gonna
get you
this.
there.
Coach Saban says this: you don't worry about what everybody else say. You worry about having the opportunity. They gave you an opportunity by playing Georgia. You could have sent them. You could have sent shockwaves through college football.
Instead, everybody got sick of listening to him talk after that.
But see, so my rebuttal on that is that's awesome that they could have everybody played, beat Georgia. All those dudes were graduating and still were not going to get a chance to play for a national championship. The thing that everybody says matters. Everybody outside, all the noise outside, even though, yes, internally you can say, don't listen to that, don't care about that. But we all know that if Kellen DeBoer is not playing for a national championship in 4 years, everybody's going to want him fired. Beating all these teams around him don't matter because that's the Bama standard. The Bama standard is a title every 3 to 4 years.
Yeah,
he may not be held as high as Saban was, but that's still the standard of the school, right? I mean, that's kind of what you do. For them, the whole argument with them is that we had all these dudes come back specifically to play for a title, did everything we were supposed to do to get there, and still got left out.
So you don't play in the biggest game of the season. I watched
it's not a
you
big game
struggle
anymore.
with
Bowl games don't matter. They really don't.
and they
this
proved
one
it.
did against Georgia. This one did.
No, it don't matter.
No,
It didn't
no.
matter.
Back-to-back
It didn't matter
defending
at all.
champions, then you have something to stand on. Then
There's
you
nothing
have-
to
then you
stand on
can-
there. What are you going to do? Go and still argue that you should have been in the national championship
They
game?
still
You
were.
can't.
If they
They
beat
still
Georgia,
did.
if
You
they
can't.
beat
You got
Georgia,
They
they
still
put the
did,
whole
bro.
world
They
on
still
notice.
did.
I promise you that.
No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't because nobody's coming back.
Jay, they
That's
were
my
still
point.
making the argument, even though they got beat by 60.
And that nobody played. They can make the argument.
Yeah.
They didn't play.
And
But
and,
Ty,
and, and, I, and I
continue.
hate to say this, if they would have beat Georgia, I don't think anybody would have really cared. I would not
Exactly.
have, I would not
Nobody
have
would
cared
have.
because
I
I
don't
would be
know
looking
about
at
that.
next season.
No.
I'd be looking at next season.
One game in
Hold on.
2 years.
No,
I don't
no,
want
hold
it.
on.
Or in
Hold
3
on.
years,
I don't know
actually.
about that.
Hold on. Allow me.
games.
I could not disagree more. If they would have beaten Georgia, people would have cared. You want to
No,
know?
I don't think
No.
so.
Wait, of course they would have. Of course they would have. Because UCF went out there and beat Auburn in 2017, and people still talk about whether or not they should have gone to play for a national championship.
UCF.
We want Bama.
That doesn't matter.
Bruh.
That doesn't matter.
Ty,
The
we know.
point is-
Ty, we laugh at UCF for making championship
We're
rings
still laughing
because
at
they went
that question,
undefeated.
too.
They still did it though.
But they
That's the
still
thing.
The problem is, Jay, and your thing is like we can't say that you have a great culture. And one, I think that trying to liken Florida State to Alabama, that's not the comparison.
That's not fair.
Right? Like one team is they're not even in the same conversation, right? Like saying that the Bama standard is this and that's why they're not in the same conversation. At Florida State, you're trying to prove why, hey, you need to come here. Bowl games are proof, hey, we're continuing on, we're building. You had an opportunity. All those guys quit on their brothers. And they came back and didn't play
That's right.
in the biggest game to try and go out there. Right?
Give
Like
it to
Jake,
Liberty.
you played. Would you have gone out there and played with your brothers, or would you have tucked tail and been like, oh, it doesn't matter? That way I get to sit on my hands and say after we get our ass
Against
beat.
that team.
And that's why I said,
That one.
can you imagine, Coach? Hey,
The two-time
all the
national
years
champ.
that Coach Bowden, that's all he cared about was the Rose or the Orange Bowl, and to know
Well,
that
because
they,
cared
that
back
they
then. It
didn't.
mattered back then.
It still
It
matters.
doesn't matter.
It's
It still matters. You can't tell me that a team that's lost one game in 2 years. That's silly. That's silly, man.
No one
way.
cares.
No,
They
it's
can,
not.
Florida State could have went
Because
14 and
we
0,
all
and they
know that
still
they
weren't the
knew
national
they were
champions.
gonna
They still
lose.
weren't going to play
Come
for a national
Jay, I think it
championship.
might
Not
not
with you.
matter to you, but it matters to a lot of people.
I think
I
it
don't
matters.
think it's gonna, listen, if they would have
It mattered to those guys at Georgia, didn't it? It mattered enough to them to go out there and put up a game.
Yeah, because
Georgia's
Georgia was
returning
tired
all
of
those
the
players.
Georgia
That's
was
why.
tired of hearing about it.
It mattered to
Well,
Bryce
Georgia thought they
Young, Will
believed in the
Henderson.
Final
I
Four.
like this.
Okay, but then PG, if Florida State thought how does that PG, hold on. How does that argument stand in reason? If you're saying that Georgia showed up because they thought they believed they needed to be in the Final Four, that's
It-
the whole argument. Florida State
contradiction.
made.
Because Florida
That's a
State
contradiction
did
in of
everything
itself.
that we asked them to get to the Final Four and be a potential
And then
champion.
they
And
took
here's
their
the thing,
ball
like,
and went home and
and here's
cried
the thing.
about it.
So
Come
did
on,
Liberty.
win
man.
that game.
Come on,
They,
bro.
they,
Liberty
they
was
win the game
undefeated.
against Georgia, and they still
Liberty was
lose.
undefeated.
Their
Does that mean
lead
they're best?
tacklers,
They're good.
their
Georgia
two
going
best
for a
defensive
three-peat.
linemen, their best running back.
Georgia
their
wasn't going
best
for
wide
undefeated is all
against
that
Florida
matter.
State.
They
Georgia
lose all
was
of that
going
next
for a
season, so it doesn't
three-peat.
matter. You can't.
Georgia
carry any
wasn't
of that
going for
momentum.
a three-peat against Florida State.
It's
No,
that Big
but
12
we
gotta stop
mentality
saying
coming,
that.
coming
We gotta
to the
stop
SEC.
pretending like Georgia didn't just lose to Alabama. Like we gotta
That's
stop
not what
pretending
I'm
like
saying.
they were going
had
for a
just as
national
much
championship. They
reason to
weren't.
complain because they lost one game and it was in the SEC championship game. They had just as much reason to complain as anybody did,
Facts.
and
When-
they
And they-
didn't. They went out there
complained.
and won by 60 instead.
They
Their-
complained.
But Georgia
their
lost.
call was
and
right.
their
They
players
did.
weren't
Their
going to
call
sit
was
out.
right, Jay.
And
Their
this
And
call-
their
wasn't a
players
Louis.
weren't going to sit
A
out.
This
lot of
wasn't
their,
a
all their
Louisville
players came
team,
back.
right?
We're seeing them this coming season too.
If
But
you
if it's
really
about
want to prove
being
yourself,
undefeated,
Okay,
let me
here's-
let me ask PG this. PG, if it's just about being undefeated, winning your cup, then Liberty should be in it. If that's what it's
Right.
just about, Liberty should be in it.
That's
We
why
don't- we-
watched
we
you
don't
all-
put G
I
as the
watched
same-
you
as the same
struggle
ranking.
against
Cincinnati-
Florida.
I
Florida's
watched them
terrible,
struggle against
right?
Louisville.
Terrible.
I was
You
gonna be a
almost
quick
lost that
It
conversation.
game.
doesn't matter that they struggled
Georgia-
against Louisville. The fact is, this team
It does.
went 14-0 in a major conference. They beat Clemson. They beat all of those teams in the regular season. And then we're
Clemson.
telling them everything you did in the regular season doesn't matter because you lost your starting quarterback. And we don't believe a month's worth of preparation can make your second string like at least able to play in a play like that. It's disrespectful to leave a 14-0 Florida State team out of the playoffs. Like, and at the end of the day, Georgia lost to Bama in the regular season. So I don't want to hear the excuse that Georgia thought they should have been in over Florida State. They
Here's-
lost to Bama.
They lost the
Florida State didn't lose.
championship game to Alabama. The championship game.
Yeah.
of the
It
conference.
doesn't matter. They lost a game.
Well,
I wanna-
here's the thing.
I want to put this one thing out there real quick, just from like a previous player standpoint, from we're talking about returning players, number one. Okay. If we look at like what I just want to say, Kalen DeBoer, because this is a good example of culture and whatnot, right? With Kalen DeBoer, what you're seeing is all these guys came back. Penix could have left, Odunze could have left, right? McMillan could have left, gotten drafted way higher.
Mhm.
Okay. All these dudes could have left. They came back to play for a national championship. Granted, they made it, and they made it. It was close in some aspects. I still think they would have played. That's my point. Is I think DeBoer puts in that culture that's there. I do not think Norvell had that same type of culture. The next part I will say to this, from a program standpoint, right? From a program standpoint, is like I do think it was extremely disrespectful to Florida State. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell you guys right now, Texas beat Bama early in the season, but if you play that game later in the season, Texas doesn't win. Texas lost to freaking Oklahoma. They shouldn't have been in the playoffs. I'm going to tell you guys again. Like, everyone wants to argue with that one. I do not think Texas deserved to be in the playoffs. I think if you want to look at the strength of schedule and the way who lost to who and continue to break that down through the year, you know what I'm saying? I think Alabama, fair enough. They do deserve that. They deserve that number 4 spot.
Can I interject?
Go ahead.
If you look at the criteria at what the committee was looking at, strength of schedule, Florida State, you beat a Liberty schedule. You had a Liberty schedule.
That's the literal strength of schedule.
That's what it was. That was the first thing where they failed yet. All right. And then they go to a conference game with their 3rd string quarterback and they inch out a win against a 3-loss team at the time. How many losses did Louisville have at the time? 2?
Oh, Louisville. Okay.
Louisville had 2 at the time. So
they had 1.
I think they had 2.
I mean, you inch out a win, and you're trying to tell me your strength of schedule, how you won that game, is going to be what you want to take to the playoffs, and that's what you want to see. No, we're not doing that.
They would have had a whole month to get Tade Rotemaker, first string rep, and the ability to be ready for that playoff game.
Hold on, if I may, PG, Mike Norvell told on himself. Where's Rotemaker right now? He got rid of his quarterback that he was politicking for a guy that wasn't even 60%. That's had one season over 65%. He obviously didn't believe in the guy. We have eyes.
That's fair.
I watched him struggle against Florida, who wasn't that good, and Florida's 3rd string quarterback took it to that vaunted FSU team. The 3rd string quarterback. PG, they get slapped around with Rotemaker by Michigan, Washington, Texas, or Bama. Take your pick.
Or Georgia.
I don't care, though.
Or Oregon.
At the end of the day, you can't tell me you can't give him enough preparation to come up with a game plan to put out a competitive game against any one of those other 3 teams in the playoffs. This is an FSU team that beat LSU at the beginning of the season. And they held Jaden Daniels,
with Jordan
the guy
Travis,
that won the Heisman Trophy. Like, I mean,
their offense is going without the quarterback.
Let me fight you on this. If that's your argument, they beat LSU, they done all that with Jordan Travis. Once that young man is not on your team no more, you cannot look at that team like it's the same team. That'd be like if Jalen Milroe got hurt. We're not the same team. I'm sorry, we're just not. And here's the thing. One more thing: is it 4 best or 4 most deserving? Yes, Florida State deserves to go to that championship because they went undefeated in the ACC. Was Florida State one of the 4 best teams? See, me personally, respectfully, I don't give a damn about your record. That go for Bama or anybody else. If there's a better team out there, I watched y'all put TCU in the championship the year before that. I watched y'all put TCU just because their record was better, right? Well, the team that beat TCU, Alabama beat them like they stole something. Something. Bryce came back. Hold on. Bryce came back to make a point. He could have set out like the Florida State dudes did. Will came back. He could have set out. You know what Bryce and Will did? Nah, we ain't going out like that. No.
Top 10 pick. Jared Vernon,
right. We're going to come back, ball. Let me tell you something from a player. We all played this game, and I'm going to be real, and I don't give a damn who get mad about it. Them boys did not want to play Georgia, and Mike Norvell didn't either. That's why they set out. They'll use that as an excuse. We undefeated, and we can go talk about this for day. They would. Do you think a competitor would want to see? We got Georgia, the so-called best team. Bet we're gonna make a point against them. They chose to sit out.
One thing though, real quick. We didn't put TCU in the national championship. TCU won a game to get to the national championship.
They lost.
That's the thing. They won their game to get to the national championship.
Were they
we gotta
better?
Respect them.
Fair enough.
Didn't they lose the conference championship?
Were they better? Simple question.
Jake, they lost the conference championship.
They lost to Kansas State in the conference championship.
But then they beat who was that? Michigan?
Well,
No,
they
no.
won the playoff game. Okay, I see what
That's
you're
what I'm talking about. No.
They beat
I hear what you're saying, Ty. No, I'm talking about they won the game in the playoffs to get that. They beat the team that the next year went to win that championship. That's my point. Is that I want to make sure that
I'm with you, Coach.
not throwing false equivalencies out there, right?
And they had they had their starting quarterback too.
I get the shade of TCU getting the snot kicked at them by Georgia because Georgia was great at that. That was the year Georgia was great. They were undefeated for a reason, right? And I think that if you go undefeated, you should deserve the opportunity to get boat raced by a team if you do what you're supposed to.
One
get
question
there. I digress.
to your response.
But my point My point, though, with the Florida State piece is that all their players purposely came back so they could all play together for a national championship. Dudes that should have been gone. They brought them. They all say they want to come back to play for this title. Now, I totally understand the argument around quarterback, in which that's why the NCAA added that provision later in there so that they can say, well, we don't feel like they're going to have an optimal game or whatnot. Florida State, Jordan Travis, yes, Jordan Travis was that offense. Florida State was carried by that defense. That defense is what carried them.
Yeah, 100%.
That's how they won those games with those bad quarterbacks. That
right.
defense carried them. Jordan Travis was amazing as well, offensively.
Trash. They were also in a trash conference. That's look. The criteria was never to go undefeated.
It's true.
Okay,
Facts.
your criteria
True
though
fact.
is
Best
absolute
team,
trash.
man.
That's not true though, because
But
the
that's
committee
their
hasn't put in the four
criteria.
best
It
teams.
is true. It
No,
is
they
They
true.
beat
haven't. How many
10-win
times did it,
LSU.
okay, you know what? I'm
So we
about
consider
to
the
you see
entire
this
schedule
behind
trash.
my wall. I'm about to oust it
Well,
right here.
Jay,
How many times did
LSU is not
Oklahoma
very
make the
good.
playoffs
That's
and they
an
weren't
issue.
one of the four best teams in the country?
LSU's defense was akin to USC's. They had
No, I totally agree with you there. I mean, they beat Missouri. I mean, the only game they lost to was they lost to Ole Miss, and they shouldn't have lost that game. That was malpractice by Brian Kelly.
They lost
right?
to-
They lost to Bama, and they lost to Florida State.
And they were
Four best.
They beat
Four most
Missouri.
deserving.
Not four most
Which is-
deserving. The
and-
four
Was
best teams.
TCU better than Alabama that year?
The committee
No,
never puts in
But the
the best.
committee said they deserve to go.
because their record was better.
And
They
gentlemen,
deserve to go. If
I
it's
do-
deserving, cool.
I do
Hold
have
on.
a
With
point
it.
of clarification, right? Jay, you said that the committee put in that provision. That provision has been in since 2013, since the inception of the college.
Has
football
it?
playoffs.
Okay.
Yes, that's
It was.
not
It
true.
was always there.
That's
It's
not
it's
true at
never
all.
been about being undefeated or any of that. It's the best four.
Mm-hmm.
And that they never put in the best four. They hardly. I think they
No,
might have done it once or
I
twice.
would disagree with you. I would disagree with you. I think there was
No,
a couple
because
of years
hey,
that they
Texas
didn't
was
get the
not one
best
of the best
four.
four. Georgia should have been in above Texas if we're making that argument.
I agree. I agree with that.
I do agree with that.
I agree with that.
It's always there. It's always there. There's
know.
always somewhere you can point
This
to.
was the
If
year
we're
that
saying
but this was
this.
the one year that you had that one team that could make that huge argument because they were undefeated. You didn't have a bunch of undefeated seasons from SEC teams even or the Big Ten teams because you just didn't, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of those years, think about the last year that Oklahoma went to the playoff, nobody in Norman wanted them in that playoff. And what happened? Mario Cristobal gagged at Oregon and lost to Arizona. And that's why Oklahoma got in. So we know that it wasn't always that way. There were times but it could have happened a lot of years like that, and they're lucky that it didn't. But the truth is, after what they saw in that championship game against TCU, there was no damn way that they were going to risk screwing up the ratings with that crap. They weren't going to do it.
That's a point, Jason.
Can I give you a tweet from Jamari Sawyer, the center from Georgia that year? He tweeted this when we saw that Bama didn't make the playoffs. He tweeted he didn't say Bama. He said once the team from Tuscaloosa wasn't in it, we knew we won. If that don't tell you all you want to know, I don't know what else to tell you. Four best versus four most deserving.
It's not four best. It's not been the four best.
It's never.
And
four
and,
best.
and and you're not going to convince me they've always put in the four best. They never do it. They never do it.
I'll
It's
agree
about
with that.
ratings as much as it is anything else. But the one
It's about
that-
ratings, and that's it.
Ratings.
It's ratings only. It's not
the
best.
12
It's
money,
always
baby.
playoffs is about
It's all about that
access.
money.
It's not about getting. It's not about fairness. It's about access,
Hmm.
so that you can shut people up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I like
always
that.
it's always that because
Sure.
again, Georgia should have been in there last year.
Mhm.
If we're going to keep arguing back and forth on this,
Yeah, I
right?
know.
Georgia should have been there. That period. That's the one, right? There's one even
We'll
argue
agree
fully.
Florida State
Georgia.
shouldn't have been.
I don't agree. I don't.
I like that one.
I don't.
And
like
that's why they had that rule.
They
since
were undefeated,
2013.
bro.
I
Put
don't.
Liberty in that too, then. You know?
Yeah.
For real.
Hey,
Put 'em
We've
in.
never done that for a G5.
get North Dakota State down here and put them in the
The only
undefeated.
playoffs.
G5 that's ever got the opportunity like that was Cincinnati.
Cincy. They,
So they
if
do
it's
it right.
about
They went
record, they
undefeated.
deserve to go. They
went
deserve. They're
It's not,
undefeated.
no, it's not about record. It's not about just record. It's about rankings as well, where you are throughout the
Oh,
season.
rankings.
And that's the
Okay.
problems that the G5s have is we never rank a G5 very high. Cincinnati forced them to because it was 2 years in a row, and they were already up there at the top. They couldn't just drop them just to say, well, you know,
Right.
we don't really
Right.
need to put them in there. And they gave us a
Yeah.
fun game. It's just they went against Nick Saban, who knows what the fuck he's doing.
The Bama
That's right.
players were on the sideline making jokes about that team, bro.
Which is why
Rice
Fickle,
move.
Fickle's at Wisconsin. He recognized, I
Yeah.
need some bigger dudes.
Yep.
It's just, I mean, that's just the realisticness about
Give me
it,
the
right?
hoes.
I mean, he
That's
did
truth.
well at Cincinnati. Is just,
Yeah.
my defense is built to shut people down. Nick Saban said, I'm not stupid enough to throw against Sauce Gardner. I'm gonna run it down their throat.
Yeah.
And so he
Yeah.
ran it down their throat.
3-3-5, and he just ran it on
Yeah.
the whole game. I was like, cool. Let's do
Right. I
this.
mean, but that's the thing about it. That's the only thing Cincinnati could do, right? Well, I mean, what else they gonna
Yeah.
do? They ain't got the bodies for that, in which hence why I said Fickle went ahead and bounced, because he realized, well, I'm not gonna get the fat boys here in this G5 conference. Now Cincinnati's in the Big 12, they may start seeing an influx of donor money to be able to go after bigger players. But my point, as PG said, it's never always the best. It's just they pick who they think is going to give them the better show. It's really all it is.
I think in a lot of ways, though, that can be akin to best, though, right? Like if they want the best games, then they're after some of the
Then
best
Georgia
teams.
would be in there. Would have been in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think
And
the
Georgia would
problem
have won
is
their third
that
straight national championship.
Probably.
I don't think
Michigan.
so.
I think
because
Michigan would have
don't
won it
think-
still. I had
Facts.
been on Michigan at the beginning of the season. I just felt like, even with
Yeah.
all the quote unquote cheating scandal stuff, that they were going to somehow go in, win a national championship, they're going to vacate all their wins. It's going to piss me off.
18
And if
seniors. That team
everything
different.
just
different.
worked
They beat
out
Georgia, man.
exactly as we talked about on Bleach Report, Ty. It's like,
And-
watch.
And gentlemen, if I may, the SEC championship game is a little bit of a false pretext, and I'm going to tell you why. Bama left so much meat on the bones, it was unreal. They dropped 4 interceptions, and I'm being generous. 5
Yeah.
of them hit the defensive backs in the hands. 4 of them were just like through the hands. That game had the possibilities of not even being close. Bama catches those interceptions. Georgia had, I think, 14 points off, or no, 17 points off of those. Now take 17 points off Georgia's side and give Alabama 10. So I don't know, PG, how Georgia would have beaten Michigan when had Bama's defensive backs caught the ball, they'd gotten blown out in the SEC championship game.
We can always do the would have,
Yeah.
shoulda, coulda.
It's a
piece in
would
there,
have, I agree,
That's-
but like
that's-
if we are looking at this from a logical perspective, I don't think Georgia would beat Michigan just because
But we
of the way
watch
Michigan's
we've
defense.
watched
is-
Georgia tighten things up once they get a little bit further in. I mean, Stetson Bennett was out there doing things for him the second season, right? Year 1, we was all questioning if Stetson Bennett's even good enough to do anything, and in the second
Yeah, but I
year,
mean, I look at schematics, right? Schematics make matchups, and that Georgia offense wasn't good for the Michigan defense.
Oh, that's fair. I think if anything, Georgia would have to figure out how to just run it down their throat as much as possible to keep Michigan off the field.
Yeah,
Which
Georgia
I think
wasn't gonna stop
Georgia
Michigan
had
up
the
front.
horses for it. I think they had the horses for it. They couldn't do that against y'all because that's Nick Saban. I mean, shoot.
Yeah, Michigan had a better defensive front last year because Jaheim Otis was banged up.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So like it's like you said, it's styles make matchups, right? I mean, I think that going up against Michigan, it could have been a situation where they could have figured out how to slow down the run game that Michigan really just does all day. Even though I'm still trying to figure out how in the hell is JJ McCarthy somehow still got drafted high. I just
Don't talk to
don't
me about
understand
that,
him.
JJ.
Hey, let's end the show before we get on that, because I will
Yeah,
go.
because that's not going to end. We'll go
Come
forever,
on,
but
dog.
yes.
JJ McCarthy?
Next,
Yeah.
Come on, dog.
I mean, sneakily, he was, when we talked about it on Bleach Report, he was my sleeper for Heisman, just because Michigan was supposed to be really good, and he just didn't have to do it. He just ran down everybody's throat.
Don't tell nobody else that, bro. Don't ever tell nobody.
before we go, on to the big-
guy?
Who?
That was a running joke, man. We were joking about it on the show. I'm just like, man, I don't know why, but Michigan's gonna do something stupid this year. They're gonna have a ridiculous leader, and he may be a dark horse. And Steven was looking at me like, bro, wait. Well, you got a point. They're bringing back a lot, but then they just decided to run the ball instead. Nobody could stop it. So
Yeah.
So
Just,
here's the thing, guys.
Marshawn
We have
Lynch.
2 more conferences to go to. We're going to have to sideline that for another week because the 2
love it.
conferences we have next are probably the deepest in terms of talking about them. So we're going to have to hit that next week. Next week's show is going to be in a different date because I will be in Colorado this time next week. So we will figure out a date that will come to you then, and probably maybe on a Thursday evening or something, right? Maybe on a Thursday evening. But until next time, we're going to go around the panel, let everybody know where they can find all of your great stuff. PG, we'll start with you. Smook, we'll end with you.
For sure.
Yeah, I've been here for a while. Y'all know where to find me on YouTube. Just come join the community, the PG show.
Jake?
Yeah, man. No, I jump on different channels. I wasn't sure where we were going. I was like, which one are we talking here? But no, man, I jump on different channels right now, and obviously here, Coach Sean's new channel. It's cool jumping in with PG and Jay and Jason. I'd love to meet up with you guys and jump in and talk some football. I'm just a football junkie. You guys all know that. Obviously, still on Bama football on YouTube. Maybe I'll make an appearance on the Smook Network soon. You got to see what Smooky says, dude. But
You pulling up.
yeah, and so and obviously around the table sports here at Ty on the Mondays doing the around the table talk. Love it. So, and then I'll have a Twitter up here by this evening, guys. So we'll get that out this evening.
Nice.
Jay, my man.
Y'all know where to find me. For most that's in here, and it looks like this is also being shared on everybody else's channel. Jay Unfair Sports. You search for me on YouTube as well as wherever podcasts are downloaded and listen to, and find me on the Bird app. At Unfair Sports. Thanks again, Ty.
Of course. Jason.
Hall of Fame college football. It's at CFB-pod right here on YouTube. You can also find me on the Bird app. It's JW_HOF. Hey, yeah, you guys, I'd love to have you guys on my show. I'm starting to do a lot of more morning lives. So anytime you guys are open in the mornings and stuff like that, you want to jump on, love to have you guys on. Any of you that's open up for any of you guys to hop on there. So yeah, it was fun. Good show, man. We got it. The short conference turned into longer than what we talked about.
Right.
Always
Right.
is. Always is.
Coach Sean.
First and foremost, thank you to Ty and all these great guys on the panel for tapping in and making it very, very, very fun. I'm sure the people really, really enjoyed it. You can definitely find me. Just started up my own YouTube page with the help of Ty and Coach Smook. It's doing really, really well, fast, faster than I thought. It's JMHO Sports Talk, just my humble opinion. Sports Talk on YouTube and on Twitter. JMHO Sports Talk on Twitter and on YouTube.
Coach Smook.
Hey, everybody in here. I just want to give a special shout out to my brother Ty for bringing this together. I knew it was going to get spicy. Me, PG, Jay, and Ty, we kind of got to interact. Middle of last season was that? It was a little bit before.
Yeah.
It was hot then. I love getting on with these guys. Nice to meet you, Jason. My brothers Jake and Sean, man, y'all already know. But yeah, you can find your boy at Coach Smook on every platform, man. We hot right now. Y'all was watching Twitter. Y'all know we went down a few weeks ago, but we hot now. Like the Coach Smook morning show is really hot. We getting the recruits on. We interviewing guys. We got a special coming up here in the next week or two. I don't think people are seeing this coming. It's gonna come from far right field. You know what I'm saying? But we got it coming, and I can't wait to start getting in on this around the table a lot more, man. This is fun. This is my type of energy. Y'all know I'm very controversial. Love to spice it up a little bit. So yeah, check me out at Coach Smook on all the socials. And again, fellas, man, I enjoyed this, man. I'm telling you, from top to bottom, man, this is a cash, man. It was definitely. My dad jumped in here and he was like, I could tell when my dad enjoying something because he's literally like in the chat, like going back and forth with people. I'm like, yo, this is good. So I can't wait to continue to do this. And shout out to my AAA fam, man. Everybody in the AAA fam for pulling up, supporting Ty Hayes, man. Look, this is what we about, man. Coach Smook Network is about networking. So I appreciate everybody for showing up and supporting. And yeah, Ty, appreciate you, man. Appreciate the panel. Love y'all boys, man.
Of course, man. Glad you were here. And for everybody who donated, Rich News, thank you for the donation over there. Goofball, Alan, Barry, Anthony, for the double donation, man. Thank you very much for that. And I know, Anthony, you asked a question about FSU and NB. For me, Anthony, it wasn't about that. It was just about that provision in the college football playoffs, right? Like that was the ultimate crux for Florida State. And it's something that the committee just hadn't had to exercise before because we hadn't seen a team with their star player go down like that in terms of a quarterback and then be in college football contention, right? Like we've seen quarterbacks get banged up, but not knocked out of the conversation. And that made it a little bit of a unique. Go ahead, Coach.
Hey, real quick, shout out. We got a special guest in the house,
Yeah,
man.
I was gonna say it, man.
my guy Mick Gillespie, man.
And the
Listen,
tailgate, baby.
if you
Shout out
watch,
to Mick.
if you know, but see, you see Alabama fans, we know who Mick is. You get what I'm saying? Like,
I used to
so
call this show. Yeah.
exactly, man. So shout out to Mick Gillespie for being here. I don't know if it's him or Brett, whichever one it is. Shout out to you guys. Love their content too, man. I think they probably next up on the line to get over here and get it. Mick can get in some good debates too, man. Mick get in some good debates. So yeah, that would be cool, Ty. We might need to pull Mick on here one day and let him replace me. I just want to be the referee one day. I like this. I ain't got to be the messy one. You know what I'm saying? I like this.
Yeah,
And look,
absolutely.
Ty,
Thank you for pointing that out.
before I get out of here, much shout out to my niece, Jess, who was in the chat. I sent her the link. She tapped in with us. She's a proud graduate of my alma mater, Alabama A&M University. Go Bulldogs.
Go
You know what I
Hornets.
mean? And we, oh my God. That's so disrespectful.
The show's gonna
That's
keep going.
awful. That's so
We're gonna keep
disrespectful. Shout out to you. You know, God is good.
And listen, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Around the Table Sports Through the Haze, where this is just meant to be like you're out at lunch or dinner with a bunch of your college football buddies, arguing about football, talking about football. That's what it was meant to feel like, and we achieved that this evening. Until next time, let me introduce you to the most esteemed panel, or the most esteemed guest on the panel, the 8th member of the panel who hasn't said a word yet, but you know always gets the laugh, and that's the spinning wheel of doom.